Gregg Berhalter is a good coach. Not a great one, not a bad one either, somewhere above average. Not everyone would seem to agree with me though. I go online these days and see comments like this constantly. Embarrassment of a federation. Can't wait to get to the round of 16 in our home World Cup, then to lose. Gregg will be cheered for exceeding expectations. Fuck this federation. My expectations for a new coach were low, but holy fuck. At least 4 more years of this clown show. So, goodbye to Gio and hello to Jordan Morris. Also, who's going to replace Ferreira in the 89th minute? Balogun or Pepe? First round knockout as per usual. Such a defeating feeling knowing 3 years in advance. This team should mutiny. And on Christian Pulisic saying that he doesn't understand the hate that Gregg gets, here are a few comments. CP10, low-key a shill. Another increasingly common Pulisic L. Idiotic take. Aside from scoring, dude's been a walking L. And my personal favorite, clearly anybody who thinks Gregg is a good coach is a casual. And from someone with influence on the community, I took a shit this morning. Here's a picture. It was a big one. Bravo, Filippo, for that expert level tactical analysis. You see, I would love to judge Gregg Berhalter on sporting merit, on real wins and losses, on his ability to build a roster, create effective game plans, and build and mend relationships that are important to this team. And we will talk about those things today, I promise, in a bit, but I have to first address the elephant in the room, ourselves. I know what I'm about to say can be taken as holier than thou. I promise that is not what I'm trying to be. This is really just my honest opinion, and I'm sorry if you don't agree with that. And that's absolutely okay if you don't agree with my opinion. It's okay to not agree. It's absolutely okay as well to criticize Gregg, US Soccer, and even me. My main problem with this entire announcement is we aren't discussing Gregg on sporting merit. Fans are spewing negativity towards US Soccer and even other fans. And in return, US Soccer Federation makes baffling decision after baffling decision, further entrenching themselves in a war against their own customers. The internet is great, don't get me wrong. I do enjoy having the world's knowledge in my pocket every day, but there are moments now where I find myself wondering why people who obviously don't live in the real world have the loudest and most elevated voices, because at the end of the day, all of us are human, the people that are making these comments and the people and the coaches that we're talking about. These days it seems to take less and less time between the actual coaching announcement and Twitter posts comparing that coach to Adolf Hitler. Gregg Berhalter is literally Hitler now. If you are anything except deeply unsatisfied with this hire, you're labeled an abuser enabler. You obviously don't care about this team or this sport or the success of US soccer going forward. And if you aren't already mourning our World Cup loss 3 years in the future before any games are played, then you are a moron. The loud minority of fans now want to be more outraged than any of their friends. And the outrage is accelerated by people in the community that should know better, people that find themselves in positions to sway opinion. And what do? They douse this situation in kerosene and light it on fire for more clicks, more views, more advertising dollars, because outrage is a currency on any social platform, and being someone that you are watching on a social platform, that fact alone makes me incredibly sad, because that's not who I am and that's not who I want to become, and that's not why I want you to be watching me. And you know, I expect this type of behavior from the jabronis of YouTube at this point, but what is most appalling is that through some of the expert media teams on CBS and ESPN, they're capitulating to the extremist fan base viewpoint. I have a lot of respect for Charlie Davies and Sebastian Salazar, but they should be ashamed of some of the comments that they made a few days after the Berhalter hire. Charlie Davies made a wild comment that because the US women's national team has equal pay now, that the men's team can't spend more on a coach. Not only is that patently false and thoroughly debunked after the comments were made by Davies, but it feeds into some of the worst and most misogynistic conspiracy theories that seep into the US men's national team ecosystem. Then we have Sebastian Salazar on ESPN using Berhalter's domestic violence from 30 years ago as a connection that US soccer now endorses abusers. Nobody is endorsing abusers. Nobody is saying what Berhalter did was good or right. What the US Soccer Federation has made a decision on is that the event itself happened a long time ago. Berhalter immediately sought help, told his counselors and coaches. The couple broke up, they forgave each other and have since moved on, and no other evidence of abuse has ever occurred. So for Charlie Davies to say what he said about equal pay and for Seb Salazar to say what he said about abuse, it validates the most negative and dangerous perspectives within US soccer to perpetuate. Can we all just take one step back for a moment? Because I want to ask you why you became a fan of this team. Was it to feel sad about a coach that won 2 trophies and then got knocked out of the World Cup by a Netherlands team that hadn't lost in 10 straight matches? Did you become a fan of this team so that when the team wins a tournament like Nations League, you don't allow yourself to enjoy it because of who the coach will be in the future? Did you become a fan of this team so that you can hope for the team to fail so that the coach gets fired? Please just ask yourself those questions and grow up, enjoy life. Allow yourself to feel good about the things that are actually going good. And by the way, I did not want Gregg Berhalter to be rehired, but the reasons that I didn't want him rehired were actual sporting reasons, like his roster construction or how he manages the in-game when plan A fails or how he alleviates conflict with important players. But we're not able to discuss any of that because the fan base and US soccer have gotten into a war of emotion. I do want to ask you though, why is your hatred blinding and deafening you from seeing or hearing any good that has come from Gregg Berhalter? Have you forgotten that Gregg recruited Serginho Dest, Yunus Musa, Ricardo Pepi, and started conversations with Folarin Balogun? All of these players are critical to the US. Have you forgotten that Gregg took a team that didn't even qualify for the 2018 World Cup and rebuilt it from scratch, integrating our youngest and most inexperienced squad ever? Have you forgotten that he won 2 regional tournaments in 2 straight finals against our biggest rivals? Have you forgotten that we didn't give up a single goal during the World Cup group stage in the run of play and then got knocked out by a world power that was undefeated in 10 straight matches? Gregg is not perfect, and I'm not saying that. There is a lot to improve on, but you have to admit the guy had some modicum of success. And what makes all of this worse is that US soccer is not innocent in all of this. I wouldn't be talking about this if they hadn't announced the hiring decision literally during the USA's best performance maybe ever against Mexico. I wouldn't be talking about this if Gregg Berhalter was able to coach the Gold Cup. By the way, why is Gregg Berhalter not coaching the Gold Cup? I wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't a press conference the morning after the Mexico game where Matt Crocker, the new sporting director, outlined the extensive and robust coaching search that ended in hiring the same coach that we had before. I wouldn't be talking about this if US soccer had just taken one small moment to think of a better way to present all of this. So here are a few things that US soccer could have done differently to alleviate this situation. Number 1 is announce the hire after the Nations League or after the tournament where Gregg will be able to take over the team. Number 2 is allow Gregg Berhalter to coach the Gold Cup. And the third is to not condescendingly talk about an extensive and robust hiring process and then show us 3 slides detailing the perfect candidate, which funnily enough describes Gregg Berhalter perfectly. It is really sad now that we need to depend on players like Christian Pulisic and Timothy Weah and Ricardo Pepi and Anthony Robinson and Chris Richards to come to Gregg's rescue and tell the fans to back off. If the team likes Gregg Berhalter and wants to play for him, that is honestly enough for me and probably should be for everyone else. I did not want Gregg Berhalter back, but the players know way more than I do. That should be end of for everyone. And by the way, nobody is holding a gun to these players' heads. Pulisic, Weah, and Pepi, they are all media trained. They could have said, yeah, it's great to have a permanent coach back in again. Can't wait to get started on the next chapter. But instead, they provided ringing endorsements for Gregg Berhalter. And a fun fact from the real world, Christian Pulisic and all of the others know way more than you and me about Gregg Berhalter and his ability to coach the US men's national team. Okay, I think that's it. I think we can finally discuss Gregg Berhalter on merit. And having steered the US men's national team through statistically one of the most difficult groups of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, Berhalter has now been tasked with guiding the team into now familiar waters of the 2026 World Cup, on home soil in the US. And while the original hiring process was tainted with some light nepotism, his 4-year tenure was laden with silverware, with the 2021 Nations League and Gold Cup trophies standing as testaments to his success. However, his leadership style wasn't without its critics. The most poignant criticism stemmed from his handling of young star and winger Gio Reyna during the World Cup in Qatar. Berhalter's decision to bench Reyna for the opening game against Wales caused a ripple of discontent within the team. And this actually leads me to a bigger issue that I have with Gregg and his insistence on a flat 4-3-3 formation and his resistance to using a creative midfielder deeper in the pitch. We saw in the Nations League what it looks like to have a riskier approach of putting Gio Reyna as one of the number 8s in the midfield. Berhalter's impressive winning record, the highest win percentage among US men's national team coaches historically, does provide a statistical justification for his reappointment, but stats often don't provide the complete picture. This leads me to the question of the day for you. With Berhalter back, what is your expectation for the Copa America and 2026 World Cup? Does the US make a semifinal? While many players, including stars like Christian Pulisic and Timothy Weah, have expressed their support, like we talked about for Berhalter, the larger question here is not merely about the individual personalities that Berhalter gets along with well, but about the direction of US soccer as a whole and his ability to squash beef with players that he hasn't gotten along with. For Gio Reyna and John Brooks, I have to trust that these are adults that can put the past behind them, and I also have to trust that players endorsing Gregg know that he was critical in building an environment that players want to be a part of. I mean, think of the shit shows that the Mexican coaching carousel is causing for their national team, or even the world powers that seem to be in a perpetual daytime drama. If Gregg creates an inclusive environment and players are energized and excited by that, then who am I to say differently? The historical context also presents a very interesting perspective, and for this, research was done by The Athletic. The second cycle success rates of managers paints a challenging picture, with a noted regression in win percentages for managers leading their teams into consecutive World Cups. However, every cycle, every team, and every manager is unique. Berhalter's challenge will mostly be to draw upon his experience from the previous cycle, while at the same time evolving his tactical and man management approach to keep pace with the fast-evolving international football landscape. I do think it's really interesting hearing Matt Crocker and Oguchi Onyewu talk about surrounding Berhalter with support to make him a better coach. I think here is the key, because I think they know he has faults, and it's easy to see where they are. At least for me, it's roster construction and in-game management being two prominent issues. The success of Anthony Hudson and BJ Callahan as his interim successors should serve as a healthy pressure on Gregg Berhalter entering this role, seeing as we now have a baseline for this squad in terms of performance without a proper coach. If BJ stays on, I also think this gives him a newfound confidence to challenge Gregg in the pursuit of building the best program possible. Also, to be fair to Gregg, Ricardo Pepi was not in this type of form before the World Cup. Josh Sargent is a long way behind the talent of Villar and Balogun, and Gregg rarely had a healthy Gio Reyna to put on the team sheet. And while he made decisions that I absolutely did not agree with, I at least understood why he made all of those decisions, every single one. Berhalter's success will hinge on his ability to embrace the lessons from his past and use them to navigate the complexities of the present, all while keeping an eye towards the future where, in his words, the US needs to stake a claim as a force to be reckoned with in the world of international soccer. And whether you like it or not, get ready for Berhalter Part 2. Thank you everyone so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you want to go one step further, I do put a lot of effort into scripting, filming, editing, and publishing these videos, all to connect with you, the audience, and I do that all myself independently. So if you do want to appreciate and support those efforts, I would be honored if you would consider becoming a Patreon of the channel. The link is down below. And if you want to see the behind the scenes story of how Gregg got his job in the first place, you can watch this video next. See ya.